Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
And welcome to another episode of Filibuster. I'm Phillip Gilfus, and I'm joined by someone new to the Nerd Party Network, and that's Asra Husain.
Hi, everyone.
Asra, welcome. Sure, a tradition that we have, I guess, in Filibuster land is everyone sort of talking about what their nerd credentials are. So what would you say are your nerddoms?
Oh, my nerddoms. Well, I love Star Wars. I know that's antithetical to you and your love for Star Trek, but I do love Star Wars. And comic books, X-Men is kind of my jam. That's pretty much it. I'm trying to raise two nerdy girls, so hopefully it rubs off on them. I feel pretty successful in that my oldest wanted to be Princess Leia last Halloween, so better than Disney princess,
Sure.
I suppose.
Well, technically, I guess that is a Disney
Well, technically,
princess.
yeah, she is Disney, so.
Or a Disney general, I suppose.
Right.
Well, one of the other nerddoms I know you like, because that's how we met, is politics. And
Yes.
that's not really what we're going to be talking about, but kind of, because we're going to be talking about our shared love of Hamilton.
Yep.
And for those who don't know, and I don't know how you couldn't have, but if you don't know, this is, of course, the Broadway hit musical created by Lin-Manuel Miranda that has been on Broadway for almost, I want to say, a year and a half. I'm doing this off the top of my head. And, of course, it's now spreading throughout the country as it tours. It has, started started off Broadway, and then quickly went on Broadway, and then went to Chicago, which is what we're going to be talking about, as well as its New York performance. And now it is now in San Francisco, and it's going to start touring throughout the United States. And of course, it will now be international. It'll be starting in the West End in London next year in 2018, and all of those things beyond. And so, I know there's two kinds of people: those who know Hamilton and love it, and those who don't know Hamilton. So I thought, first of all, we'd talk about how we both came to this being Hamil fans, hashtag Hamil fans. So, Asra, tell anyone how you first came to Hamilton.
Sure. Well, it's ironic because it was actually because of you.
Oh, yeah. Yay, mission accomplished.
A lot of your Facebook posts. I think for some birthday or something, you got a Hamilton mug or something, and you'd posted about it, and I was like, I wonder what that's all about. And then I kind of started hearing about it a little more here and there, and then Google Play had a deal on the album, so I said, well, it's 99 cents, that's hardly anything, I'm going to check this out. And I think I played it on repeat for the next year after that. So probably the best 99 cents I've ever spent on anything. Wow. Yep. So you should pat yourself on the back for that.
All right, I'm spreading the word, evangelistic. And then, so you started with the soundtrack, and then how did that lead to you wanting to see it in person? And how many people did you drag along in the cult here?
Well, I am one of those people that when I listen to music, I listen to the lyrics a lot, and I really try to get into the lyrics a lot. And so musicals appeal to me for that reason, but I don't get a lot of time to actually sit and listen to soundtracks to musicals usually. Around the time that I actually picked up the album, I started working from home, so it was a little easier to listen to stuff while I would be working, and just kind of listening to it, the story just really pulled me in. The lyrics and, Lin-Manuel Miranda's ability to write just astounds me. I mean, he is a very talented man, and his ability to tell a story is amazing. So just kind of the story and just how I think everyone can find something in it that they can relate to and reflect on, and I found it really relatable and just really interesting and very emotional, and so that's what pulled me in. My husband will tell you that he probably got sick of listening to me talk about it and saying how much I wanted to see it, and even my kids love the album because of it, which is problematic because it's not edited.
Explicit. Yeah.
So
and you have young ones.
Yeah, I have really little ones, and so there's a lot of singing really loudly other words over verses or turning the volume down or skipping kind of doing self-editing of songs. But if you actually ask my 2-year-old what's your name, man, she will answer with Alexander Hamilton, which is awesome.
Yeah,
yeah,
and,
so,
and in our household, it's never a good idea to ask what time is it.
Oh. See, in
Because
our
it's
house,
always showtime.
Showtime. See, in our house, we get answered with bubble guppies, which is it's time for lunch, regardless of what time it is. So sadly, that one doesn't fly with us, but.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I took my husband and we saw the show, and he actually had not listened to it at all until we saw the show. And after that, he downloaded it into his car, so it's on his car's hard drive, and he listens to it all the time. He says that's what he listens to at work every day. So,
was there a little bit of like, see?
Oh
see?
yeah, of course there was. There was a lot of, wait for it.
Wait for it. I
like it. Yeah.
The first time I heard about it, and this is, I'm going to do a little bit of pushing my glasses up here. I was reading Wilson Quarterly, foreign policy magazine, like you do. But it was funny because in the sort of the back section where they kind of talk some pop culture, they mentioned, there's this thing going on. And I'm blanking on the name. Hopefully you can remember the original theater where it's performed at, off Broadway. I'm blanking on it. It's very famous, but I'm just blanking on it for a second. But anyway, that's where Lin-Manuel was working on it, doing rehearsals. And it's like Hamilton, and of course, I am a huge Hamiltonian. I mean, my nerddom is a lot of American government and American history, and especially constitutional history. And so I'm one of these people, and we're going to keep it on the musical here, but I'm one of those people who is diehard Hamiltonian. And Jefferson's a jerk. Like, that is, I've been thinking about that for 15 to 20 years. And I'm like, finally. Anyway, but
no visits to Monticello for you anytime soon then, huh?
Yeah, no, I've been there twice. And it was funny because both times I went there, and I went there very recently with my fiance. And it's funny because when you go into Monticello, for those who don't know, so Monticello's in Virginia, where Thomas Jefferson is, and it's Jefferson's home that he continually was built and rebuilt and finagled with the whole time. But when you walk in, there's actually a bust of Hamilton right when you walk into the foyer.
I didn't remember that.
I guess he can't be all bad then. But yeah. I guess the story of already having that history passion. I'm like, well, they're going to make it a musical. Well, I'm there. I like musicals. I like history. But then there was so much more to it, which, of course, I know we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. And then, so, I think, years passed, of course, or, 2 years maybe. And then when I finally heard, and I kept hearing about it, and I'm like, well, I want to see this. And then, I was one of those people counting down till when the soundtrack was going to pop on iTunes. I'd already pre-bought it, which I never do that, but I did. And then I just listened to it, and just like you, and so many people we know, once you listen to it once, you're on it, man. That's on repeat. And so when you were listening to it, were there because again, this is before either of us saw the actual show. Mm-hmm. Just listening to the music, what were the songs or the story parts that really kept with you?
Initially, My Shot was the song that really pulled me in. Shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey, yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. And I think that's pretty universally a pretty popular song from the show. But the more I listened to it, the more there were different songs that would stand out for different reasons. So, I mean, ultimately, now my absolute favorite song in the whole show is Wait For It. I think there's a lot of lyrical things that are interesting in that song, and I like that it gives Burr's side of the story and kind of shows that he's not really a bad guy. He's just a little misunderstood. But I like that gives that side. The part where Philip dies is heart-wrenching to me because I have kids, and it's that's just, I don't think I can get through that part without crying at all. We saw the play, and during the musical I was bawling, And, my husband's like, I'm not crying, you're crying. I'm like, yeah, we're all crying. It's okay. Those are really, like, the standout parts. I think the cabinet battles are great. And if I were a high school civics teacher, I would, use those nonstop to teach, because I think they're great for, younger generation to kind of relate a little bit. The whole musical is, but I think those are good ways to kind of teach those lessons. Yeah, I think, to me, the first half of the musical was always kind of the strong half that I always really would listen to over and over and over. But I think since I actually saw the show, I've started to appreciate the second half a little more. Yeah, how about you?
Yeah, sure, because I think knowing, not everything, I read a few books, because I had actually read the Ron Chernow book, which is the basis for the Hamilton the musical, years ago. And then there's another, Richard Brookhauser, or maybe I'm saying that name wrong, also wrote a good Hamilton book. And those were sort of, so I kind of knew the facts and sort of the passion. The reason that Alexander Hamilton had always had a passion for me, because, again, I'm not trying to be nerdy here, but like in early America, and whether you want to call it pre-America, because it's pre-Constitution, but anyway, was that everyone where you were born in the United States, who was here, or who was British and white, if you were born in Virginia, you were Virginian. If you were born in Massachusetts, you were a Massachusettan, or whatever, and that's who you were. You were your state. And with Alexander Hamilton being not from the United States, being an immigrant, even though he arrived in New York and is very much identified with New York, he's not a New Yorker. He's an American. And to me, that was always his passionate vision, because he saw America before a lot of people saw America in the United States. And so to me, that was always this passion that everyone, Jefferson and all these other people, can always seem provincial. And he is seeing a whole country. And some people might not agree with that, but he saw a big power. He saw someone who was going to be a peer to Great Britain, the greatest power there was at the time. Like, we're going to be the same. We're going to be a big country. And so that passion, when I, to hear the musical, the history to me is so wonderful, because it's 85-90% accurate, with some dramatic flair, but it's pretty solid, factual basis of everything, the revolution, American Revolution, and then those problems, of challenges of building those first steps towards government, and pre-Constitution and the Constitution and the squabbles. Because to me, what makes history so fascinating is the realness, the people. These are all real people. These aren't, fake stories and everything's inevitable that's going to happen. No, nothing was inevitable. But I just love all those songs, like you said, the cabinet battles. Right. Jefferson's "What Did I Miss?" Because here he comes in from France, dilly-dallying while we were doing the hard work. But all that stuff is so interesting. But to me, what I didn't expect, because I'm like, okay, history, I'm there. This is this is the great representation of the story. Was more. There's so much, to call this a rap musical, I don't think it's truly what it is. Maybe R&B, because there's so many hip hop.
Yeah,
there's so many.
It's much more hip hop than.
Yeah.
And there is. You're right. There's like R&B elements. There's jazz elements. There is rap, but it's more than
there's
just
classic
rap.
Broadway construction too, and
yeah.
Yeah. And I think one thing that kind of eventually blew my mind, because I think with Hamilton, and this is just me, every time I see it, there's something new I appreciate. And coming, not that I'm saying in professional theater, but someone who's been involved in a lot of theater, and this is going to sound very backwards, but I'm going to admit it. One thing this show did to me that has changed however I'll see theater from now on, is that, if you would say certain shows, I'd be like, well, you got to cast that a certain way. I'm not saying we should preclude people, but okay, you could have like an all-woman production of a Shakespeare or whatever, but like there's certain roles in certain plays that you always kind of have to have certain people. And I think after Hamilton, I no longer believe that. You have a black George Washington. Okay, and it's great, and it works, and you believe the whole thing. So, all bets are off. Like, there's no arguments for not having blind casting in theater anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And actually, to circle back to what you were saying about how Hamilton himself kind of changed the mindset of Americans and versus colonialists. After we left the show, that was actually the one thing my husband commented on, was that my husband's an immigrant, and he thought it was just fascinating that you had this country, and one of the great obstacles to forming a union was getting people in the country to actually identify with the larger union rather than their colony, and how Hamilton really kind of screwed with that idea with people and kind of tried to, make that a little more universal. So I think it's interesting that both of you kind of came away with that same perception from the show, which was something that maybe I thought about, but wasn't really something on my forefront until my husband had brought it up, and we actually had like a pretty long conversation on our drive home after the show about that. So
right, because I mean, like, you have the Schuyler sisters who originally cast, and I think the casting continues this way. You have 3 women playing sisters who are not of the same race. Like,
right.
So you gotta do things like, if you're casting, you're like, well, they're sisters, they all gotta look alike. Nope.
No,
you're gonna have one
Hispanic.
You're gonna have one African American. You're gonna have one, who's sort of. I think Philip Pippa Sue. I think
she's Asian.
Yeah, variety of things. I think, but anyway, and I'm like, but it works, and I don't care. And and I think Hamilton has sort of reverse casting where, and I don't think it's written down, but I think it's not going to have a lot of white folks in there except for maybe a king. And then, and there's some, so that you can't not do that. And some other parts. But I think that's, for people who have not maybe had opportunities in theaters and in shows, and who maybe have not looked at Broadway or musicals or theater, because, that where's my spot for it, whether it's young folks or whether it's people who've been, and like, this is a new paradigm. I mean, I don't exaggerate, but it is.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about the actual show experiences. So you sort of have the Chicago experience, I have the New York experience. So tell me about the actual going to see this show in Chicago, what it was like, seeing what you've had in your head forever and ever on repeat, and actually seeing it live.
Sure. So, there were a couple things going in, listening to it on repeat without looking at the track list as I was listening. I actually had no idea where the first act and the second act split. And so I was kind of, listening to it, I would kind of like guess, maybe it ends here, or maybe it ends there, just based off kind of where they had full ensemble choruses and things like that. And I was surprised when we actually got to the show, and the second act started with Thomas Jefferson coming in, which makes sense. But it was kind of surprising because I had always just assumed that they would stop the first act at the end of the Revolution and then start. And so that was kind of a surprise. The other thing is, when you listen to a Broadway recording, those are the characters for you when you go to see a show. And so I was a little worried that we were going to go see the show and I was going to hate it because everyone sounded different and it wasn't what I was used to and it wasn't what I had been listening to for the past year. And I was actually really surprised. I mean, all of them did such an amazing job just singing, and most of them really matched the Broadway cast vocally really well. There were so many people that you couldn't tell the difference when they were singing. We were having conversations afterwards of whether we actually liked the way that it was delivered by the Chicago cast or by the recording, and my husband and I actually got into an argument about the King because he really liked the Chicago King. He thought the King in Chicago was way better than the Broadway cast, and I'm not so sure that I'd agree, but not to say the King in Chicago was great. But to me,
Groff sauce though. Oh, come on.
Yeah, I don't know that you could top that. But, Miguel Cervantes is great. I mean, he did a really good job of owning the character and, giving it his own life to it. So, I mean, it was definitely, I was a little worried, but pleasantly surprised. And honestly, after we were done, we were trying to look up tickets to go again. We haven't gone again, but we were looking up tickets to go again. So.
Now, were there any parts that you're like, oh, I didn't know that's what that was like?
The part where... What parts were there? There was one part that when they were doing my shot, I didn't realize that they were going to be doing shots every time they said my shot, which, makes sense. But, there were a few other things. Like, I remember there was, my mind's blanking now. It's been several months since we've seen the show.
Well, like, one thing I don't think I ever realized until I was watching it is that during Philip's first rap, that Eliza is doing beatboxing.
Yes.
I was like, oh,
that was another, I didn't realize that a lot of that stuff they were actually doing live beatboxing, which was like I thought it was all either kind of like a track that they were playing or it was the orchestra or something, but no. They were doing it all, which is pretty amazing.
Sure. Well, I'll let you think. My next question, I'll let you think about it. I'll talk about New York for a second. But like, is there any like based on your like listening to the soundtrack? Was there any of the live actors like, wow, that character I actually never noticed, and I think I like it more than I thought I would. But like for the New York experience, and this was long running with me and my fiance, who was not my fiance at the time, but just, his girlfriend at the time, because we very early in our relationship. Well, I say we, she. Bought Hamilton tickets. I mean, I'll have to remember how long we were dating. Maybe like 4 months, 5 months, and she already knew I was gaga about it.
That's how you knew she was a keeper.
yeah, and so she got Hamilton tickets, but it was like, I don't know, maybe, I don't want to say a year out, but it was close to that long out. That's how long the tickets were, so I guess she was dangling me along. And so we finally made it to New York and saw it. Of course, by the time I saw it, not a lot of the originals were there, but a few were. I have to do my cheat sheet here with my playbill here. So the originals, quote unquote, that I saw were Chris Jackson was still there as Washington, Oak was still there as Mulligan and James Madison, Anthony Ramos was still there as Lawrence and Phillip. Of course, those are the main ones. There were a lot of the backgrounds that were still originals, the ensembles who played different parts as well. So that was kind of cool. And it was funny because actually, what's his name? Javier Muniz, who's the current Hamilton, actually was not, I don't know if he was sick or he was gone or whatever. So we got the understudy who was, and I'm not going to mispronounce this, I know, Michael Luawe, I think is his name, who was actually ended up playing Hamilton. But he was still, and this is going to sound really backwards, and I apologize, but I was like, a black Hamilton? That doesn't make any sense. It's supposed to be Hispanic. I know, it's stupid. But no. But I was like, and actually I think Michael, has the credit of having played both Hamilton and Burr. I think because of performances, he's done both parts. And he's the only one who's done that so far. But no, it was a little weird in my headspace about like, okay, it's not Lin-Manuel, it's not, all these other folks, Leslie and all these other who I know from the recording. Because some folks, not that they were very different, but just slightly different enough. You're like, okay, well, this is a new thing.
Yeah. And
in the Richard Rodgers Theater, and my only experience, but like, it's actually not a bad theater. Like, and maybe this is just rationalization, because we weren't like the back seat, but close to it. But I don't think there was a bad spot necessarily in that theater. Obviously, I would have loved to be up front, but like, we were all the way in the back on the balcony. But it was still, I guess maybe because it's New York, everything's can't be too big. But it was still an awesome experience, and as for me, as far as the crying, you're not crying, the whole show, blah blah blah, and then you get to the end part, and you're like, the final scene, the final number, and you're like, I'm holding it together, I'm there, nothing, I'm good, I'm gonna make it through, and then suddenly you have them go like,
oh, can I show you what I'm proudest of? The first private orphanage in New York City.
The orphanage. You're like, oh God, I can't do it. You're like, I was holding it together till that line.
Yeah, that was a moment for me too.
Yeah. Just because, you just have that final Eliza moment. Because just reading quickly in the Hamilton, which we'll talk about in a second, that the closing number doesn't feature Hamilton. And so you have his wife sort of being the main person closing it up, and that sort of gets it right, there, and because it sort of does the great job of sort of telling the rest of the story. And it was funny because we happened to be in New York the same day that they opened up the first pop-up Hamilton store, which was like a block or two away, and I had already bought him enough stuff because I'm already going crazy. But it was still fun to look around there and see everything and talk to everyone. And like, did you have any like waiting in line with people, kind of exchanging Hamilton stories, or?
Sadly, we actually were really late getting to the show, so we got there and just went straight to our seats. And about 5 minutes later, the show started. But we overheard a few people during intermission while we were waiting to buy all of our lovely overpriced goods, and And yeah, I mean, there were all sorts of folks in the audience. I mean, there was a couple with their teenage kid that was sitting near us, and there were like a couple of friends who had driven from out of town. I mean, like just all sorts of folks that were there, and pretty much all of them. A lot of them. So the couple that was there with their kid, I guess the kid had no idea what the show was, and I overheard the kid telling their parents that, "Oh, this is a lot better than I thought it would be." So there you have it.
Yeah, and I think as my, I don't know, this is gonna sound stupid, but as my fandom grows, I think different things pop out. I think when I first listened, other than what I've talked about already, I think the King just to me pops out immediately, and I'm like, oh, you have You'll Be Back. I will sing that very loudly and badly, but that is like a song always I'll be there for. But then I think as it grew, Leslie, anything Burr did and Leslie sings, all of his songs, like you mentioned, but even Theodosia, I mean, everything, The Room Where It Happened, all of his songs, because, I mean, Leslie, who's the original Burr, I think just, knocks it out of the park. I mean, that, as much as we want to talk about Lin-Manuel, I mean, Leslie Odom Jr. is just an awesome talent. I mean, Tony Award winning, obviously. I
have to agree with you. And, the thing that I find interesting as I listen to the soundtrack more and more is that, I don't really feel like, I know it's called Hamilton, and I know it's about him, but I don't feel like he's necessarily the star. Like, I feel like Burr and Eliza really, like, shine in their own right throughout the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is, as much as it can be an ensemble piece, it is an ensemble piece, because I think, and like, would you think of, even though you've heard it, seeing it, that this is actually ensemble, the actual ensemble in the show, aside, this is a small cast, because they double cast. Like, people play two parts. Like Hamilton and like Eliza and the Skylar, those are the only people I think who don't. Like, how was that to be like, here's Madison, and he was Mulligan before, and all this stuff.
And Jefferson was Lafayette. Yeah, actually, I found that really interesting because at first when I was listening to it, when I first got the album, and I had no idea, and I had a friend tell me, you should really look at the liner notes when you listen and look at who's singing each song, because you'll see that it's the same person playing different parts. And so then I went back and looked at it, and, I found it interesting how parts were doubled up. Like, for example, Jefferson and Lafayette, like, you have the Frenchman and then the guy who loves France, who was in France, all being played by the same guy. And, you have Peggy and Maria Reynolds played by the same person. And in the first song, she's able to say, well, I loved him. And she's not lying, even though she's dressed as Peggy. So it was interesting to see how that was done. Oh yeah,
and like even the Philip or Lawrence and Philip both die.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's one thing I wanted to bring up. Did you? And I had heard this, but I think I'd forgotten it. And then to see it in the show, like I heard from Lin-Manuel, reading stuff that he's like, one thing I always do with the soundtrack, just because I love it and it's been my experience, always leave one song off the soundtrack.
Yeah, and he left that. Yep.
Even the show. And like I thought like, okay, it's probably gonna be some small bit, but I didn't like, oh my, that provides so much context. Lauren's song is like, that's why he decides to do all these, or Hamilton decides to do all these things.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was a nice surprise in the show because I had no idea. And then, he sang his song and I was like, wait, that's not on that album. Where's this from? So it was nice to have something that I had no idea was coming that added to the story, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, the fact that it's mostly true or all and I guess it's like the old accusation, if we made this up, you wouldn't believe it.
Right.
But like you said, like where the first Act 1 is very, like I think it's fun to listen to, you got the war going on, you got ambition, you got people going everywhere, and it's like the fun part. And then Act 2 is sort of like, no, and just sort of like
it's the train wreck.
Yeah, like you start with Jefferson, you get the cabinet battles, things are going good, and then suddenly like the Reynolds affair, and you're like,
right,
no!
You're like, no, stop,
say no to this. and then you sort of have like Washington leaving, and it's just like things just go off the rails, and Philip dying, and then you're like, oh, this isn't gonna end well, and of course it doesn't end well, and we knew it wasn't gonna end well going into this, but still.
You still hope that somehow it will.
Yeah, and how was it, to me? This was actually talking about the show experience versus just listening to the music. Mm-hmm. The cacophony of the ensemble. I mean, this show for the ensemble, for the dancers, for the background singers, which are more than that, the ensemble. That is a lot of work that they do in this show. I mean, there's a high dancing, and like you have to be on top to be cast in Hamilton in the ensemble. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, what did you see that really impressed you? Because I can think of one number in particular, but what was that you saw from the ensemble?
I'm trying to think. It's been so long.
Well,
now.
I think one thing that surprised me was all the little parts that I didn't realize. Of course, I get where they come from, but like that they were the ensemble, like Mr. Reynolds, like James Reynolds is, and then like the farmer refuted, and then all these sort of like ensemble parts. You sort of have like the step up where they get to play sort of main cast.
Actually, one of the parts with the ensemble that really, I think, struck me was Yorktown. Because, when I listened to that on the album, for some reason, the direness of the situation never struck me until I actually saw the show. And I saw kind of the emotion of the dancers and their actions and, kind of running from perceived threats that they were watching off stage and things. So that really was something that changed when I saw the show. Basically
during the actual duel. World was wide enough. But anyway, when you have the bullet is the ensemble member.
Yeah, that was well done.
That was so crazy to me because and there were certain things when I would listen to the song on the soundtrack, I'm like, I don't know how you do this. Like when you do the reprise for Satisfied, I'm like, how do you rewind?
That was something that I was curious to see how they were going to do. And that actually, I'm going to take that back. That number was actually probably the most impressive number of the whole show. Just because of the fact that they were able to recreate every step from Helpless so perfectly and show it from Angelica's point of view. I mean, I can't even imagine the amount of work that they had to put into that. And, I'm a layperson when it comes to theater, so I'm sure you can appreciate it even more having done theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things they have, and I'm going to get this, I have my fiance is more professional theater than me, but they have the turntable, which Les Mis is the only thing I can think of that has that. But the which I think is funny because a hip hop show has a turntable. But when I say a turntable, for those who don't know, it's that the middle part of the stage is a circle. I mean, you can't see it, but it rotates. In fact, it rotates multiple ways. Like they think there's a circle within a circle, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And so, which if you've ever seen Les Mis, they have sort of the same construction. But that's a very interesting thing, especially I think like with the Schuyler sisters when they come for their opening number. That they're sort of spinning around themselves, and it's just this very cool kind of thing. Of course, when you start getting into numbers like the duel and the duels, because there's multiple duel musical numbers, that really kind of shows the perspective that you wouldn't think you could get in a theater. Yeah. And then one thing I was thinking about the other day was that, the Hamilton set, I'm sure is the same that we both saw, but like when you think about it, like it's not. I mean, it is a lot, but it's not a lot. Like, there's no like, oh, you're in New York now. There's a picture of New York. Right. Oh, you're in Philadelphia now. It's just,
I thought, that, because I had seen from stills of the Broadway show kind of what the set looked like, and I'd seen what the opening number looked like online. So I assumed at some point they would switch up the set, but they never do. They just kind of bring in like a couple tables here and there, a few, little props here and there, but they really don't do a whole lot to change the set. But they don't need to. They do a good job of, utilizing it in different ways to make it feel like different locations and just making it really versatile.
And I wonder, in a way, this makes it a show that can really live on, not only in the big cities, but like this could be easily, if you have the talent, which people do, a high school show or a college show.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't going to be a lot of technical stuff. I mean, other than the dancing and performing, but
right.
like as far as
maybe some trying to figure out how to get around the revolving floor, unless, I don't know if high schools have capabilities to build those. That'd be some stage crew, but...
Now, one thing I wanted to talk about was sort of the Hamiltone, which, of course, is the fan term for the official Hamilton book. Let's see, it is called Hamilton the Revolution, which I think is actually... There's a further subtitle, if I remember correctly. Here it is. Being the complete libretto of the Broadway musical with a true account of its creation and concise remarks on hip-hop, the power of stories, and the new America.
That's quite the subtitle.
Exactly. Well, I think it's, I mean, for those who don't know the actual book, it's very, you know, it's so Hamilton. It's like a pamphlet, like Hamilton's pamphlet. It's like it has that kind of old paper feel and construction and writing, and even has like all these black and white photos they used with this sort of like very old camera to take, like old, I mean hundreds of years old. Well, I guess it can't be too old, it's a camera. But like a 150 years old or 100-year-old camera they took pictures of the cast with. But anyway, was it like, so you know, you've heard the soundtrack, you've seen the show, to actually start to read the thoughts behind all these things and these other stories, what did that bring to your appreciation to it? You
know, it really did. I have to admit, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, since you were kind enough to gift me a copy of the Hamilton, I'm not completely even through it. It's so dense. But, you know, I am one who takes these kind of books and I flip through them and kind of skip around through them. And I don't know if that's what Lin-Manuel had intended this book to be used as, but that's kind of what I do. And, you know, the things that have stood out to me are, you know, I really enjoy the liner notes that are in there. It's interesting to see Lin-Manuel's thoughts behind how he came up with the lyric, or where his inspiration for something came from, or the writing process for something. So that was kind of interesting. And, you know, just the background with a lot of the characters and how they developed and how different actors were brought into the show. You know, that really kind of added a richness to the background of the story and kind of some of the characters and how they're portrayed. So I think that the book has been great for kind of bringing a greater appreciation for all the work that has gone into the show. And the
yeah, like you said, like to you, I think the first thing I was like, oh, there's all the lyrics, yay! And then just like you said, Lin-Manuel's footnotes, because there's not a lot, but there's enough to be like, yep, I know what I was doing here, you know, like, cause not in a cocky way, but sort of like, you know, this is what this pays off, and because he's been working on it for like, wrote it for like 3.5, I don't exaggerate, but 3 years or something like that. I mean, it took him a while to get it to where he wanted it, and I think the work shows, and like, you know, theoretically, if you look close enough, there's West Wing references, and then there's all these old school, you know, hip hop and rap references he throws in there, and I'm like, was it Genius? I mean, that's not the Hamilton, but like if you go to the Genius website where they annotate all of the lyrics, you can see all of the references Lynn's done in all of.
Yeah, and I mean, Genius is like crazy when you look at the annotations there. It's like insane compared to the actual Hamilton.
And then, what'd you think of the mixtape? For those who don't know, this was, you know, Lin-Manuel originally thought of this. The whole Hamilton musical was not going to be a musical. It was going to be a mixtape of just songs and that he's going to make from the story that he loves or he fell in love with. And then it becomes a musical. And then he decides, you know what, let's revisit it, and does the mixtape. So have you actually managed to listen to any songs yet?
Oh, yeah. I got the mixtape the day it came out. I pre-ordered. I had it. It was good to go. So my initial thought was the songs that were covers I did not care for. The songs that were original, I pretty much love all of them. So I think the only real exception to that is Dear Theodosia. That one song, that one cover I really, really like. And that's one of my favorite songs on the mixtape. But, you know, other than that, like, the other covers, I'd rather listen to the Broadway recording and listen to the actual song.
I think the ones I like are the dropped ones, like from the musical. Like, I love, and I can't sing it, on air because of family reasons. But like the John Adams, oh God, that is my favorite track. Sit down, John. I mean, that was the one where I just, because it's real, again, and not to be nerdy about it, but Hamilton and Adams hated each other. It's like Lyndon Johnson and Bobby Kennedy. They hated each other. And so it's just, to me, I love that. It's so short, but I love it.
Yeah.
And then another good one is the Valley Forge one. You know, and you can hear bits that made it into the musical, but like to me, Valley Forge of like the desperation and, you know, that we're just out here in the middle of nowhere dying, like soldiers who don't even know if we're going to eat, much less fight. And then that's sort of the story of how the Americans want is just sheer stick-to-itiveness, you know, being on the brink of defeat and starvation. And that song really brings that home. Yeah.
Yeah. Another song that I really enjoyed on the mixtape is Immigrants, because I feel like in this political climate, that's a very relevant song.
Right. And I think, and I don't know, and I don't want to presume anything, but like I know, I'm listening to people like Dave E. Diggs, you know, who was the original cast, and other folks, you know, predominantly the people who were in the original cast, who have said, and I'm paraphrasing, but like I didn't feel like an American until I did this.
Right.
To accompany these roles, and then to do it in this way, it really brings it home. And so I mean I thought it's very powerful words to hear someone say, like, hey, you know, before this I didn't feel like I was part of this thing.
Yeah.
And then now to have a taste of this, to be Jefferson, but in my own way, and to struggle with what Jefferson, you know, means, because there's a lot of struggling you have to do there, or with all these other parts in this whole story, you know, what does that mean, and does that open this story, not only the story of Hamilton, but the story of America and the story of everything else to other people.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And, you know, the few other songs, I'm just kind of looking at the track list here, but you know, the two other songs that I really liked from the mixtape were Congratulations by Dessa.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Because it's just sassy. I like it. And, you know, and I know it takes a lot from songs on the actual Broadway soundtrack, but it rearranges it a bit and kind of adds a little modern flair to it, which I enjoyed. And also the Roots version of Who Tells Your Story was pretty enjoyable.
Oh, yeah.
And that, you know, that one is a little more of a cover, but that was, I think, the one that I did like. And you can't go wrong with Common.
How have you experienced the fandom? Whether it's like just buying all these Hamilton stuff, which I've had, or it being given to you because you love it so much, or like just in the great, you know, internet or people you know, how have you sort of experienced the greater Hamilton fandom?
Sure. Well, you know, I feel like there's like a fraternity of Hamiltonian musical lovers. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's interesting because posted a few things on Facebook here and there about, you know, wanting to see the show or whatnot. And when the show in Chicago opened and people were trying to get tickets, it was a big deal that they kept saying Broadway in Chicago, who kind of runs the ticketing for Hamilton here, they kept saying, well, we're going to probably run out before it gets past group sales. So you might not be able to get tickets if you're not a season ticket holder for the Broadway in Chicago theater subscription. So actually, that's how I ended up getting tickets. My husband was nice enough to get me a theater subscription for my birthday, just so we would get tickets. But that, you know, that because of the group sales, I had lots of friends who were trying to get groups together, and, you know, folks were talking a lot about it. And there were friends that I had from various places that it was kind of like, you know, I hadn't talked to them in a while. It was like, oh, you like Hamilton? I like Hamilton. Well, we should kind of reconnect here a little bit. So, you know, I have friends who we've rekindled friendships on Hamilton. And, you know, I have a niece and a nephew who are very close to me, and they are also both very into Hamilton. And so I really hope they don't listen to this podcast because we bought them Hamilton tickets that they don't know about yet. So that'll be, I'm actually looking forward really to giving them the tickets and letting them actually find out that they're going to go, because they're going to be super excited. I'd given my nephew a copy of the Hamilton for his birthday, and my niece, I got her the mixtape for her birthday, and they were like so overjoyed over those two things. So I can't even imagine how they're going to feel seeing the show with. I mean, they're going to see it orchestra seats, like second row or something, like crazy seats that were way better than our seats were, but it's okay. So, I mean, it's just been interesting seeing how many people that I would have never expected to even pick up the album are into it. And I've been slowly amassing Hamilton items and trying to convince people in my household to let me purchase more of them, but
I think Tumblr is just half Hamilton stuff now, for anyone who does Tumblr. And I don't do a lot, but enough. I think it's actually scared Lin-Manuel off, actually, for a while.
Oh, that's funny.
But for one thing, Lin, I mean, we've kind of talked around him. Like, he's on Twitter, and which, I mean, of course everyone is, right? Or a lot of people are. But, like, he is very engaged.
He's super active on Twitter. He's, like, one of the few people that, he's very active, but it's not, like, a lot of garbage. Like, he actually puts things that are interesting on Twitter. And he's one of the few people that when I get the little alerts on my phone, I actually will, like, open it up and look at what it says, because it's a lot of amusing things and, very poignant things and things that are of interest. So I enjoy his Twitter.
And I would just tell people, subscribe or follow him, even if you're not a Hamilton person. I mean, because, like, he will cheer you up in the morning, and he will cheer you up at night. That is his job. Lin-Manuel will wake you up with a good, wonderful thought, motivating thought, and he will put you to bed with something nice, and that is what he does. Though I admit, like, not that I'm, like, but, like, the scary thing about Lin, I think we're the same age. I think maybe he's a few months older than me.
You know what? After we saw the show, my husband was looking up stuff about him, and he was like, yeah, Lin-Manuel is your age. And I was like, no. I was just like, I feel so unaccomplished in my life. That was pretty depressing.
It was. No, I mean, I don't, because I know the man has worked hard. Like, he has worked hard. And, I mean, he is pedal to the metal. I mean, he is Hamilton in a lot of ways. In the good ways, not the bad ways. And so, like, I know he's earned everything he has done. I mean, even doing, like, In the Heights was his first Tony Award-winning musical, and then doing Hamilton, and then doing all the other stuff he's doing now, Mona, and everything else. Yeah, and I mean, we're all cheering for him to EGOT one day, because if everyone deserves it, it's Lin. But cool. Now, what do you think? Because this has sort of been talked about a lot. What do you think of the prospect or the idea of a Hamilton movie?
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of musicals, it's hard to translate the theater experience to the big screen. And it's not that it can't be done, but I do feel like, we talked about the set for Hamilton and that revolving floor and kind of just the feel of the set. And I think that offers a lot to the show. And you wouldn't be able to necessarily do something like, in a movie, you wouldn't do something like that. It would be cinematic. It would, you'd have different locations. And I mean, I would probably see it, to be honest, but I'd go in very worried about what it would do to something that I love so much.
I mean, there is, I don't call it a rumor because I feel like it's fact, but there is theoretically a recording of the original cast. And I don't know what, because I think, and I don't want to make things up, but I feel like I read, and don't quote me, that Lin is sitting on that for a year or two, and that maybe that's going to come out somehow in some venue, somehow. Because it was always the big thing, like, hey, what about people who can't get tickets or aren't near there? And I think he knows that, and I think that's kind of one of the things about, we talk about Hamilton and the whole thing about it can't get tickets to it, but I think Lin is very aware about this wanting to be an accessible musical, not only literally, I mean, like literally being like where you have the lottery both in New York and Chicago, and I'm sure everywhere else that it's going to be done.
Yep.
And the fact that
in Chicago they've actually had shows here that have been reserved entirely just for public schools. So yeah, I mean, like, definitely they're trying to get the show, not just for like rich people who can afford going to the theater on a Saturday night, but for kind of everybody.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that's I don't know. For me, I'm an easy one because this show hits me in 8 million different ways. So I mean, this is easy but for folks who maybe either don't have a lot of exposure to theater, or theater doesn't speak to them, or for whatever reason. I think to have those school experiences of, this many seats are always going to be allotted to public school kids, and I think there was a recent New York production, or maybe it was Chicago actually, where like you said, it was a recent one. Like, this is just going to be for kids,
the whole thing was all Chicago public school students, which was awesome.
Yeah. It was funny because I think Cervantes was tweeting like, "I'm a little nervous about this show." Awesome. Well, I mean, of course we could talk about this forever, but any sort of closing thoughts about Hamilton from you, about kind of where you've been, and look at where you've been, look at where you are.
Oh, well, I just want to go see it again. I really wish that I could have seen it in New York with Lin-Manuel and Leslie Odom, because they are the characters. But I'm really curious to see what Lin-Manuel is going to do next. I mean, this has been such a huge success, and I know he's done Moana, and we have that soundtrack, and we listen to it a lot in our house. And my kids always say, "Hey, that's Alexander Hamilton rapping." But it'll be interesting to see what he brings to the stage next. And I'm really curious to see, because I mean, to be honest, I didn't really know Lin-Manuel's work before this. I wasn't really familiar with the Heights, and I've listened to some of that now since seeing Hamilton. But I would be curious to see what his next show will be, and to kind of check that out.
And then, of course, my fiance and soon-to-be wife do have tickets to the West End in London to see it on New Year's in 2018.
I'm so jealous.
I know. Well, and that's all her. I mean, we're a theater house. We're struggling to pay all kinds of bills, but we'll always make time for theater. And so, we are not afraid to buy these things and wait a year for it.
Yeah.
And, of course, England is sort of her second home anyway, so it's just an excuse to go back. But it will be interesting to see how an international audience, because this is,
it's such an American
I don't know,
story.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I didn't want to exaggerate, but yeah.
How's that going to translate to the side that lost that war?
Yeah, there's that stupid king. Oh wait, he was ours.
He's ours. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be interesting of how it translates with the British audience and the European audience, because I'm sure there'll be more than just Britons there.
And are they going to rap?
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Are they going to rap with British accents?
I know, right? I don't know. It'll all be very interesting. I guess the king was probably the easiest to cast. Like,
right.
You already got the accent. You're good.
Just ham it up a little.
Yeah. And I wonder, because, and I'm sure that's already casting, but again, I assume it's going to be heavily minority and heavily non-white, and I'm sure, and I don't know what the theater scene is like in the UK as far as is there a lot of good roles for minorities, which I think, I mean, I'm not going to exaggerate, but I tend to think they're a little bit more colorblind in UK as far as theater goes, because I'm sure everyone does Shakespeare. They don't care about necessarily that kind of stuff. But it will be interesting. I'm sure that'll be very interesting to look at. So, but like I said, we could talk about this forever. But if anyone kind of wanted to chat with you about your further wonderful Hamill fan thoughts, is there any place they can find you on the interwebs?
Sure, they could find me on Twitter. My handle on Twitter is ASRA425, or on Facebook, just look me up by my name, Asra Husain-Mohammed.
Awesome. And for those who want to chat with me, my Twitter handle is NCPublicServant. And also you can hear me here on the Nerd Party Network on Ceti Alpha 3 with my two co-hosts, Daniel Prue and Darren Moser, talking Star Trek, my other obsession in life. So, but it's been great, Asra, and, we'll see how they tell our story.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd